Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where it's all about helping you complete your financial journey to retirement. Discover time-tested strategies and get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Break away from the herd and go for the retirement you dream of. And now, here's your host, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
All right, back on Personal Pension Radio, episode number 127. Actually releasing this just a day or so, maybe the day before 4th of July. So happy 4th of July to everybody out there listening to this. Whenever you might be listening to it, make sure you thank a veteran. Thank somebody who's either serving or has served this fantastic country. Just give them a nod, give them a handshake, give them a door open, something. Give them a nice little nod. Now, Personal Pension Radio, you are on the podcast. I am the income engineer. My mission, and I chose to accept it, was to work very hard to deliver the retirement dream that Wall Street promised. Wall Street for years, decades, 30, almost 40 years has promised this Wall Street promised retirement dream. And unfortunately, it's not been a reality because the education that the Wall Street machine provides to the financial advisory community has unfortunately been incomplete. It doesn't really cover the retirement income side of the conversation, which is extremely important. So that's where Personal Pension Radio came from. That's the birth of Personal Pension Radio, if you will, was my passion for retirement income. And making sure that that dream of retirement can actually become a reality. Now, a little background, somebody was asking me recently, there was a new client that I'd met, called in from the podcast. And, we met from far across the land and got in touch. And now we're actually working on a client financial advisory relationship. But a little background on me, I was born in Maine. I am a maniac. So born in Maine, grew up there in my younger years, into my teens, and came to California when I was just getting into high school. So I have been in California for a long time, but my heart is still in the woods. Definitely my heart is still a small town boy from Maine. I still miss it. We'll go back several times now and then. We'll go back to Maine just so I can get my fix of being back in the woods. I am a certified financial planning professional. I'm also a chartered financial consultant. I'm also an investment advisor representative, just meaning that I have the complete list of letters and numbers, etc., after my name to be able to help my clients in all aspects of their financial situation. So I'm able to do that. Now, I am married to my ever so patient, awesome wife, Amy. And I do have a daughter, Miss Madeline, coming up on 20 years old. Crazy to think about. She's going to be 20 this year. She's off at college. And we have two fur people. We have little Bear and Jessie, little pound puppies that we adopted at the pound. And they are the fur people in the family. I am a woodworker as my a hobby, my therapy. Those of you who are new to the show, I do broadcast and record this show from my wood shop in the backyard. I actually have a full wood shop that I build stuff with my own two hands, and I love that. It is literally my therapy. I also am passionate about cars. I run a weekly car show. You can look it up on Facebook if you ever want to follow my car show. It is Cars, Coffee, Corona. So Cars and Coffee Corona, but the tagline or the hashtag is Cars, Coffee, Corona. You can find that show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all over the place. So I love cars. And that's me in a nutshell. Let's jump in. Make sure that you know, again, Personal Pension Radio is all about tying together both sides of the retirement planning journey. This is the huge disconnect that Wall Street has just barely been putting together, that their entire education machine for decades, since the 1970s really, has been all around accumulation. How big is your number? How big is your 401k? How big is your investment account? Unfortunately, nobody's ever stopped to say, well, wait a minute, what about income? is that the solution to income, just having a bigger account value? I'm here to tell you it is not. Personal Pension Radio and my mission is to get the message out that there are two distinct parts of that retirement journey. One is the accumulation period, that climbing up the mountain, saving and climbing up the mountain. When you get to the top, you are not done with your journey. The ultimate goal of climbing a mountain is not to reach the top. The ultimate goal of climbing a mountain is to get back down safely. So, the distribution phase of your life, that's the retirement income phase. That's the time when all of that accumulation work has to turn into income and distribution, and income that you can look forward to. And sadly, conventional wisdom, Wall Street conventional wisdom, has just disappointed the holy heck out of so many Americans who are going into retirement and finding out that the number they thought was so large was not going to give them anywhere near the income they thought. So that's what this show is all about, helping you turn the light on at the end of your retirement tunnel, making sure that you know you do not have to settle for the Wall Street retirement income answer. That with the right plan, with the right strategy in place, you can actually enjoy 60, 70, 80, 90% more income than a typical Wall Street income conversation would yield. So please keep that in mind as we go. Now, disclosure alert, alert, disclosure. I am not an attorney. I am not a CPA. I am, as I said, a certified financial planner professional. But that doesn't mean you should act on anything you hear on this show as if you were getting advice. Now, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit later on in the show, and I got to tell you, this is a perfect place to remind you that this is a podcast. This is not advice for you in your specific situation. You should not act on or take action as if you think you're receiving personalized advice. You really should meet with someone like myself, right? Contact me, Kraig with a K, at kraigstrom.com. Go to LinkedIn, go to kraigstrom.com, and that'll take you right to my LinkedIn page, and you can send me a message. You can get me in any number of ways you can find me and contact me. That's when you can get a detailed conversation going and maybe then start to get some advice that you can act on. But please don't act on things that you hear on my show, and especially, dear goodness me, please don't act on things that you hear from financial entertainers like Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a financial entertainer. He is someone that has no financial regulatory oversight and basically can spout off whatever he wants to whoever he wants. He can give out some of the worst financial advice that you could ever get, and nobody's watching out for the general public. That's a financial entertainer. Please be careful with that. Please make sure that you're meeting with a qualified financial planner, maybe someone who's actually gone to the extent of holding and maintaining or earning and maintaining a certified financial planning designation. That's a good way to choose, right? Now, let's get started. Section 1, Segment 1, Watch Your Step. Last week, I covered this Financial Advisor magazine article. Actually, it was this, the title, the front page of the magazine said, "Hardly Working, Try Hardly Retiring." And I titled that episode, "Wall Street's Anti-Retirement Marketing." Remember, Wall Street spends over $17 billion with a B dollars a year on marketing. And their retirement marketing machine and their retirement asset gathering machine is not working. The baby boomer generation is retiring, and they're finding out that what they thought was going to be the retirement of their dreams is actually the retirement of disappointment. Oh, we're going to have to work longer. And so what I'm seeing out there is I am seeing more of this, and I'm going to encourage you to pay attention. Seeing more and more articles about pushing off and delaying retirement and, people don't necessarily want to retire as soon as they thought they would, and starting to put a different spin on it, like the marketing machine And I coined this, Wall Street's anti-retirement marketing, right? So go back and listen to that episode 126 if you want details on that. Now, this week, I want you to beware of shiny things. Beware of shiny things. Literally, gold and silver. There's gold in them thar hills, right? Beware. And I was actually listening to one of my favorite podcasts. I listen to Planet Money. I love Planet Money because it's not all geeking about just investments or, this or that or, the technicalities of this or that. They really dig into some really interesting topics and they go in depth. Well, this recent episode on Planet Money, they are actually talking about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. If you've never heard of it, it's also called Pork Fest. It's a very libertarian-friendly, limited government type of Woodstock, if you will. It's a gathering, but this is more of a libertarian, not anti-government, but super limited government, even so much as they really don't even like government-controlled currencies. Those kind of things. It's called Pork Fest, or the full term was, if you want to look it up, it's the Porcupine Freedom Festival, right? And this Planet Money episode went in depth and actually went on location. The producer went there on the show, and this is the part that I really took away from it. I thought it was interesting and unique, but the one area that they were really focusing in on was this idea of currency. Currency at this festival, if you're a limited government type of an organization, you might imagine that paying for things in dollars and coins and such might actually be a little shunned or frowned upon. Sure enough, they have a whole system. Well, they have an attempted system to be able to exchange dollar bills and U.S. paper currency for gold, strips of gold and silver and such, so that you can actually pay for breakfast with gold. You can pay for breakfast or you can pay for dinner with silver. You can buy this or that. You can trade with gold and silver. Because a lot of folks who belong to this group, they believe that we should go back to the gold standard and gold should be the currency that we go back to. Okay, now, all politics aside, my takeaway from this Planet Money episode was that gold and silver and copper and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, they are not viable currencies for everyday use. I've had people, I've sat at their dinner tables, they've been in my office where they say, I keep gold, because when the dollar goes to zero, gold will be we'll come back and we'll use gold. Well, now that's a whole different episode, the idea of the dollar, the American dollar going to zero. So if the American dollar goes to zero, yes, we have probably entered the zombie apocalypse. Something on a world scale has gone wrong. Right? So I would agree that if we get to the zombie apocalypse, we might get back to a time when we're trading in raccoon skins and gold and silver, right? But until that point, the dollar bill, the almighty dollar, is the dominant currency on the planet. Like, not dominant by a little bit, but every single major country, every major investment exchange in the world, everything references back to the dollar, right? So this idea that gold and silver and copper and bitcoins and things like that are a viable currency, it's just crazy. It's crazy. At this event, at the Pork Fest event, everybody was referencing back to the comparable dollar amount. Right? They actually talked about people having to check the gold and silver prices on their iPhone, right? On their iPhone, right? They're not they're not currencies. They are commodities. They are commodities, right? Some of the people at this event, they wouldn't even trade for gold or silver. They would only trade for Bitcoin. Bitcoin, that thing that's all electronic, completely untested, just kind of weird and out there. Maybe it'll be something awesome later on in life, but it's right now been just embroiled in all kinds of ups and downs. Really, would you want to pay for things or take payment in that? Or would you rather have a dollar bill, right? A $20 bill? That's me personally. So that was just a quick heads up. Watch your step. Don't get suckered into this idea that gold and silver will somehow be a viable currency if the big earthquake happens. Because I'm here to tell you, you go try and let's say you have the big earthquake here in Southern California, or like right now, California is, as it always is in the summer, we are on fire. Right? We got fires in San Bernardino. We got fires in Malibu. We got fires all over the place. Let's say that something bad happens and we've got this, it's catastrophe, and the government systems are out of touch for days and days and days. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're not going to be able to go rent a tractor and say, here, let me shave you off a few pieces of gold, right? The guy or gal renting you that tractor, they're going to want $100 bills, $50 bills, $20 bills. They're not going to take a personal check. They're going to want cash, right? That's the secret. That's not a secret. That's the reality. That's the reality, okay? When you imagine you could have a dollar bill that's been burned almost beyond recognition, and you could send that dollar bill to the United States Treasury, and they have a separate special department that will research and review that bill, and they will confirm that it is in fact a United States dollar bill, and they will replace that dollar bill and send you a brand new one, right? Go do that with gold, right? Go do that with silver, right? Yeah, I know, you got to carry around some gold in your pocket. But when you need to rent that tractor, buy those groceries, very unlikely that you're going to be able to find some shopkeep who's going to be able to take gold, right, in exchange for bread and eggs. Unlikely, okay? Now, granted, again, if the zombie apocalypse happens, yes, we might head back to a gold standard. But we may not be bartering with gold. We might be bartering with more useful things like skills, like being able to work with your hands or do something or provide a service, right? May not necessarily be just handing over gold. All right, now, there was a great piece. Well, it's great. I say it's great because I'm the one covering it, but I've actually been covering this idea of and referencing back to building the financial castle. So segment 2, I want to share first this idea of building a financial castle, because I actually had a conversation with a listener just recently, and I want to cover this in more detail right here for that listener and for the general audience to pick up on this, because that listener and I, we're going to be getting together for a phone call actually coming up just this next week, and this will be an excellent place just to reinforce the conversation, and it'll be great to share it with you. So I want to revisit the idea of building the financial castle. I want to just go back to basics, and I want you to remember, think about, way olden days, medieval times, right? Medieval times of lords and ladies and such. They did not have banks. They didn't have, as we would think of them today, they didn't have insurance companies. They didn't have any of that. So all of the great wealth of these families would generally be kept within the walls of their castles, their grand castles. So when they were going to build a castle, what was the first thing that they would think about as they were building or choosing a location to build the castle? They would think about protection. How do we protect the castle? So they would build their castle in a defensible position on a solid foundation with great walls and a moat and hot oil and sharp sticks and various other things, right? And an alligator swimming along in the moat, even though alligators and crocodiles didn't exist in those locations, right? We all had this vision that there would be sea monsters in the moat. So let's apply how the wealthy of old, of ancient times, would build their financial house, and let's bring that back to how we build our financial house today, because the Wall Street message is that the solution to everything is invest, invest, invest. And I want you to notice where the investments come when we compare it to building a castle. So what do we say? The first thing that the wealthy of old did when they built their castle, they would figure out how to defend it, how to protect it. They would put it in a place that it would be safe from marauders, right? They would build wide moats, and they would build it on a strong defensible place, like a hill or up on a slope or such, right? In the financial world, that moat, that defensible moat, equates back to all of the things that we can do to protect our castle. You've got car insurance, home insurance, liability insurance. If we're protecting a business, we're getting errors and emissions insurance. We're getting product liability insurance, right? If we have if we have family, we're getting life insurance. We're getting long-term care insurance. We're buying those things that protect us from things that could wreck our wealth, that could come in and steal our wealth, right? So that's the moat, protection. Savings. In the financial world, that is a strong foundation. So the strong foundation in a financial situation is cash, the availability of liquid funds, the availability to tap into cash money in the event of an emergency, or hear me on this, opportunities, right? I've heard this 10 times lately. I have too much cash in the bank. Well, who says? Well, sure enough, a financial advisor or a banker has been telling them that they have too much cash in their savings account, right? Well, of course, they don't like you having cash in your savings account because they're not investing it. But who has the power when, let's use an example, in 2008-9, the real estate world fell apart? Who had all the great power? Well, it was people who had access to cash for the opportunities of all those houses on sale, right? So a good foundation for your castle is cash on hand. Whether you have it in the bank, whether you have it in a whole life insurance policy like I do, either way, you have access to cash for opportunities and emergencies. Now, we're going to keep building the castle. We got to put the walls up because now we're on a super strong foundation. We're totally protected. We're going to build. We're going to invest. We're going to save. We're going to start a business. We're going to grow. And in the financial world, that's growth. That's savings and investments. That's growing the castle. That's building those walls tall and strong, right? And then finally, we're going to cap it off with a beautiful roof. That is the income plan. That's the income plan. Protection, savings, growth, and income. Those four things, building the financial castle, cap it off with a beautiful roof that is an income plan so that you can actually enjoy the lifestyle that you look forward to, right? That's what the whole goal is. Now, how do you get there, right? So the four components of building the financial castle, they coincide with the four wealth objectives. So the four wealth objectives are really a set of guiding principles to help you stay on track while you build your castle. Okay? So while you're building the castle, much like a detailed blueprint, these are much more simple, but they cover so much. So let's go through wealth objective number 1. Build your castle and build your wealth efficiently first. Efficiently first. So often, Wall Street wants to get us to build the castle out of order. Wall Street wants us to invest. Jump right into your 401k, invest. Well, that's out of order. You're supposed to do protection, savings, the foundation, then you grow, right? Well, another thing with Wall Street is there's very little talk of efficiency. Efficiency in fees is the one that I'm actually speaking of. So when you're looking at a financial decision, before you get excited about the prospects of what the outcome might be or whatever, you've got to focus in on what the potential inefficiencies are. So what are the fees associated with this particular investment? So I had a conversation last week with someone who was introduced by a realtor friend of mine, and we looked at her investment account. And we looked at 5 different things in her investment account, and I asked her, why do you have 5 things in your investment account? And she says, well, I was told that I should be diversified. And I said, well, let's look at each of these investments and compare them to each other. Well, sure enough, we looked at all 5 of those investments, and they all move up and down over the last 5 years in lockstep. They move up and down together like they are just identical. So is she really diversified if she has 5 different investments and they're all moving up and down together? No, she's not diversified. So then we went a little deeper and we looked at how much did each one of these investments cost her. One of them cost X, the other cost Y, but they move up and down identical. Here's the kicker. She was paying in fees on the second option, the second investment. She was paying almost 150% more in annual expenses. So she needed to really pay attention to the efficiency first. She was not getting some magical improvement in her performance of her investment account because she had 5 of them. She was actually getting eaten up by 4 of the 5, costing more than the 1. She could have actually had the same performance for less fees. So when you're about to make a decision, and I'll use one, for example, like I told you I'm passionate about cars. So let's use a car decision, right? So if wealth objective number 1 is to focus on efficiencies first, is it more efficient to buy a brand new car that will have a 20% loss in value the day you buy it? Or is it better to buy a 2-year-old car that has had a 30% or more depreciation, still has a warranty, and can still get great financing, and we saved a massive amount of expense in the form of depreciation, right? That's, you know the answer. You buy the used car with a great warranty at a great price, and you keep the efficiencies. You save the efficiencies. You don't burn the 20, 25% in depreciation. All right, so that's number 1. Wealth objective number 2. Wealth objective number 2 is to plan for maximum enjoyment. Not just, oh, I'm going to save, and hopefully be able to spend some of my retirement money before I die. Before you make a financial decision, ask yourself, will you be able to benefit from this financial decision, or will you have to wait and put it off for years and years and years to benefit? I'm not suggesting that you should not put long-term money away, right? I'm going to use an example of a real estate question that a client asked me. Okay, so the clients were sitting with me and they said, Kraig, we want to buy a vacation home. Oh, okay, that sounds great. I love vacation homes. That's awesome. Well, personally, I don't have a vacation home because I have an app on my phone called Airbnb where I can borrow someone else's vacation home and let them pay all the expenses and taxes and insurance and flood damage and bats in the belfry. So just for the record, I personally like Airbnb, but these folks wanted to buy a vacation home. It was going to be out in the country in Idaho, and they were smiling when I said, okay, let's just talk about the 4 wealth objectives. Number 1, is it efficient? Okay, so let's dig into that. So who will you rent it out to? Well, we weren't really planning on renting it out. Oh, okay. So who's going to cover the mortgage? Well, I guess we would. Okay. So, well, it doesn't sound terribly efficient. Let's talk about enjoyment. So, how much will you be able to enjoy time with your kids out there at the cabin? Maybe once a month, maybe once every other month. Yeah, it's a long ways. By the way, they lived in Southern California at the time. So, enjoyment of the asset, oh, that wasn't going to work. And then we went to the next one. Wealth objective number 3. Plan for maximum legacy. Plan to leave behind whatever your maximum is to the people and causes that you choose, not the government. So here's a visual for you. When you die, husband and wife have passed away, an ATM machine magically pops up in the middle of your living room, and a line forms at the ATM machine. If you have no plan, here's what the line looks like. The government is in line first. Corporations, financial entities, they're in line next. Professionals like attorneys and financial planners, they're in line next. Okay? So you get a picture of this line. The family falls into the 3rd, 4th, 5th position most of the time if you have no plan. A legacy plan puts the people and causes you choose at the front of the ATM line to make sure that they get your legacy first. Now, maximum legacy is the objective. Whatever you choose your legacy to be, we want to make sure that it's your maximum, that it doesn't get eaten up by government taxes and unnecessary fees, right? So when I asked these folks about buying their cabin, right, I said, well, wealth objective number 3 sounds like you're kind of covering it today if you buy the cabin, because it sounds like only your kids are really going to get to use that cabin, right? Yeah, okay, all right. Well, let's talk about wealth objective number 4. Wealth objective number 4, and let's figure out whether or not buying that cabin fits into your financial castle building plan. So wealth objective number 4 is the plan must work under a variety of conditions, not just perfect. It has to work under a majority of examples and situations. So a big example of that would be, and I mentioned this last time as well, a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage. You hear people like Dave Ramsey say, oh, pay off your mortgage. And you hear banks say that 15-year mortgages are smarter than 30-year mortgages, right? The whole financial world is got all these mixed messages. But let's just take it in this financial wealth objectives discussion. If you have a plan to pay off your house in 15 years and you have a 15-year mortgage and your mortgage payment is considerably higher than it would be under a 30, and you lose your job, can you go to the bank and ask them if you can pay your 15-year mortgage like a 30? No, you cannot. You cannot. Can you just go in and refinance it and say, hey, Mrs. Banker, I just lost my job. I would like to refinance our mortgage. What's the banker going to say? No, we're not refinancing it for an unemployed individual, right? So a situation where a 15-year mortgage was selected, it does not work under most conditions, especially difficult conditions where you need flexibility. So how did it work for this husband and wife who wanted to buy a cabin in Idaho? Right? So we went through efficiency first, right? The rule of wealth objective number 1. It was not going to be very efficient because they originally said they were not going to rent it out. They were just going to pay the mortgage and their kids were going to go enjoy it. Wealth objective number 2, planning for maximum enjoyment of your financial decisions, right? Well, it was going to work out again really good for the kids who got to enjoy it, but mom and dad were only going to see it maybe once every other month. Legacy, that was covered. Wealth objective number 3, plan for maximum legacy. They were essentially going to give their kids this wonderful benefit today because they bought the cabin. How about works under most any conditions? So my question to them was, so does this work if you lose your job tomorrow? And they both looked at each other and without very much time thought about it, they went, no, it doesn't work, because he was the sole income earner. So there was no way that having an extra mortgage payment on a cabin in Idaho that they weren't renting out to cover the cost, there was no way that that was going to work for them if there was a loss of job, for example. So they stopped, they stepped back, and they said, well, I don't know. I guess it doesn't sound like that great a plan. Well, I suggested that they hold off on just giving up on the cabin dream. Said the one area that they hadn't considered was, hey, what if you rented the place out? What if you put it out as an Airbnb or a VRBO, vacation rentals by owner? What if you put it out there and let some other people rent it from you and cover the costs and be more efficient? And they thought to themselves, and they both looked at each other and said, yeah, you know what? That could totally work, because even the kids, they're not going to get to go there all the time either. So why not rent it out, right? So they actually did buy the cabin, and they put it up with their kids. One of their kids, their son, was their VRBO manager. So he would manage the rentals. Well, sure enough, here's the sad but illustrative point. 6 months later, he lost his job. My client lost his he lost his job on purpose. It was a big mistake that he made. I personally believe it was a big mistake, but he quit. He quit his job. And now, sounds bad. Yes, it was. But remember wealth objective number 4, the plan must work under most any conditions. So they had a 30-year mortgage on this fairly inexpensive place in Idaho. So they were actually able to cover the mortgage on that place and on their place in Southern California. They were able to sell their much more expensive home in Southern California and moved into the cabin in Idaho. And they were able to set up a new home base, and it was substantially less expensive to own that home. So he was able to take that breather because they had good cash on hand. Remember, we had built that castle correctly. We had a strong foundation. We had a strong amount of cash on hand, so they were able to take advantage of the 30-year mortgage, the very low mortgage, and they moved into that cabin. So now, just as a recap, the 4 wealth objectives. Seek efficiency first. Seek out all the inefficiencies you can. Identify them. Can they be reduced, eliminated, mitigated? Efficiency first. Plan for maximum enjoyment second. Make sure that you've got your legacy outlined, because you don't get to take it with you. So make sure that you get to choose your legacy. That's number 3. And number 4, the plan must work under most conditions. So stress test some of the worst case scenarios and say, hey, if this doesn't work out, are we going to be all right? Right? Keep that in mind. So there you go. That's the episode for this week. Next week, it happened again. I got another question about indexed universal life insurance. Man, this stuff is I'm trying to control myself, but I can't. I just got to say it. It is the crack on the street for financial advisors. This is the stuff that is just being pitched everywhere. It's pitched on the radio every weekend, and I'm hearing it all the time. And sure enough, another question came in about indexed universal life. If you don't know what it is, if you think you already have one, if you know what you have, don't miss next week's episode. I'm going to cover that in detail. Don't miss it. Now, I've had a bunch of folks actually on the podcast. Thank you so much. Have signed up for eMoney, the trial that I've given everybody. It is just an awesome cash flow planning, estate planning, advanced planning, data aggregation, a super encrypted vault for your documents. You can load them up. Awesome. Okay, retirement income. So much great stuff there. I'm giving my listeners access to eMoney. You've got to go and send me an email, very simply, Kraig at kraigstrom.com, Kraig with a K at kraigstrom.com, and the subject line is eMoney, just EMONEY. Please be patient. I will get to you. Remember, it is free, and it takes me time to make sure that I'm working through current things so that I can get you signed up for it, and you can get right in there and try eMoney out. It is the best data aggregation, cash flow planning software available, and most of the time it's not available unless you're working with a CFP like myself. So please send that email off. And also, thank you so much to those who have actually left reviews on the podcast. I'm looking for awesome 5-star reviews on the podcast. If you feel so inclined, go to iTunes. Just take a minute and leave me a review. Trying to get well past that 30 review mark. Really just want to keep cranking those in. So appreciate everybody. I'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you are there, we would appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.
Now for the disclosure. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended for solicitation, sale or purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. The term personal pension refers to a marketing name designed to educate future retirees and retirees about the economic principles behind creating their own pension-like income. The term personal pension is not intended to be confused with a defined benefit pension plan offered by an employer or by a government entity.